Since his arrival on YouTube back in May of 2014, it didn't take long for Jake to become one of the biggest influencers of our generation. And when he finally made the move over to professional boxing, fans of the sport couldn't help but throw shade. Despite this hatred, Paul retained a solid following. So, what is it about him that has kept his fan base alive? For all this and more, stay tuned. Why is he a controversial figure who ticks all the boxes? First of all, haters have to admit that Jake Paul has some solid skills at his disposal. Not only did he work alongside his brother Logan Paul to create one of the greatest Vine collaborations in the history of the defunct platform, he also adapted to secure himself a kingdom in the YouTube vlogging sphere. And since his success was based on his acting ability on the Disney Channel original franchise Bizaardvark, it goes without saying that his fan base started out quite young. But this didn't stop Jake from knowing exactly what his fans wanted to see from him, regardless of the massive age disparity between them. Without further ado, the YouTuber launched himself into a number of projects, ranging from the creation of the Team 10 house to the establishment of a lucrative rapping career based on popular diss tracks. And it's in this range that Paul's success and likability can be found. Rather than allowing himself to get bogged down in some sort of routine, he constantly changed things up, later making the decision to expand beyond YouTube and try his hand at professional boxing. Based on a solid hatred from the combat sports community, he then blew minds by defeating figures like Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley. But above all of this, Paul remains a controversial figure who, like Kanye West, has used certain moments to retain relevance. Keeping your likability during such controversies is another skill, so let's take a look at how he did this. Number 1, when Paul was fired mid-season from Bizaardvark. Surprisingly enough, Jake Paul lived a controversial life from the very start of his internet notoriety. After accruing a massive number of fans on Vine and moving to Los Angeles to take acting lessons, he landed a big break by securing himself the role of Dirk on Bizaardvark. And since this Disney Channel original allowed him to play a character very similar to himself, his fan base on YouTube grew as a result. But as you're probably aware, Disney has some rather stringent rules that cast members need to follow. The impressive entertainment conglomerate does everything it can to ensure that all cast members retain their standings as role models in their community. And as you can imagine, Jake Paul wasn't exactly the best man for this job. After spending just 2 years in the shoes of Dirk, Disney decided to fire Paul in 2017 when a local news report went viral by discussing his rather scandalous YouTube channel, which was pretty much the adult version of the YouTube channel his character had on the show. In this segment, a number of Paul's neighbors spoke about him, indicating that he was ruining their lives with his loud lifestyle and dangerous pranks. Suffice to say, Disney had no option but to distance themselves from the YouTuber, but his fan base went absolutely wild for this controversy, causing his channel to increase in size due to his risque behavior. And just like that, Paul knew that controversy was going to make him famous. Number 2, when Paul was accused of scamming his young fans. After becoming one of the biggest YouTubers on the platform because of his often over-the-top vlogs and childish taglines that resonated with fans, Paul went on to speak out against education. And as you can imagine, this had quite a few parents speaking out against the message he was sending their children. You see, Jake Paul had become a success without needing the education that society prescribed at the time, so he felt like it was his duty to tell kids that there were other ways to make it big. He didn't do this in the best of ways though, making his position known by denouncing teachers in a rap song that painted them as nothing more than cronies in a failing system. As much as he hated educational schemes though, he ended up starting 2 of his own businesses aimed at the education of youth on the premise that following his lessons would lead to internet stardom. The first was Edfluence, which was launched in 2018 and was critiqued for being notoriously misleading and lacking any foundation whatsoever. Paying the full amount for these lessons also gave fans the opportunity to join an expanded Team 10, known as Team 1000. At least it would have if Team 1000 had ever happened in the first place. But since his fans were still kids at this point in time, the manipulation they had been subjected to flew over their heads. Once more, Paul had gotten away with it. Number 3, when Paul was almost canceled due to his use of racial slurs. But then something unusual happened. Jake Paul quickly became the target of cancel culture when some old 2015 videos of him at Coachella surfaced rapping along to Throw Some Mo by Ray Sremmurd. For those of you who don't know, this iconic rap features the N-word quite frequently, so it won't surprise you to hear that the youngest Paul brother was called out for actually using these words while reciting the lyrics of the song. Although not intended to be spat with any malice, the fact that Paul is white makes the reciting of these words problematic. In some instances, rappers have even pushed their Caucasian fans off stage for repeating words like these that used to be used to oppress black people all those years ago. It's one of the few controversial moments that caught Paul by surprise, but luckily for him, he knew just how to spin things. He immediately apologized for his conduct and went on to speak on how he got lost in the song, forgetting about the hurt that is often inflicted by those words. Not exactly the best of apologies, but his brother Logan was fortunately also in the news at that time, but over something a lot worse. Remember the infamous Suicide Forest video? Well, luckily for Jake, this took precedence in the news cycle and had fans forgiving him in no time, considering his conduct to be far less severe than that of his psychotic brother. Number 4, when he scammed his viewers again with a fake wedding live stream. Another controversial moment that Jake Paul has made it through over the years was his short-lived marriage to fellow YouTuber Tana Mongeau, who was a figure just as controversial as him back in the day. Fans were astounded upon hearing that the YouTubers had gotten together, and even more so when the news started to spread about Jake and Tana trying to tie the knot in the not-so-distant future. Fans didn't know this at the time, but the entire situation was actually fake in an attempt to make money, with everything from the engagement to the live-streamed wedding bringing in approximately $600 million US. According to Manju, who confirmed that the live stream event was staged and non-binding, Paul had actually laughed at how easy his fans were to fool. She also described the night as nothing less than a hellish experience. While she went on to deal with a family emergency day after the event, Jake decided to go on their planned honeymoon with a group of half-naked women. Not exactly husband material if you ask us, especially considering how the two were actually dating at the time. She isn't the only ex to speak out against Paul though, with Alyssa Violet also having a lot to say about their previous relationship with the YouTuber. Fans went on to brush this off as the ramblings of a woman scorned though, and it didn't help that Tana Mongeau was described as a world-renowned liar at that point either. Comparisons with his brother. But all in all, despite the crazy controversies he's been involved in, fans can't help but to love Jake Paul for his hustle. And in comparison to his psychotic brother, he hasn't been at all that bad. Remember, Logan was the one who disrespected the entire nation of Japan and ended up posting a vlog where he made fun of a dead body that hung lifeless in the background. After discovering a pair of dead rats on his patio, he also responded to this scenario by fetching his taser and electrocuting them for all his viewers to see. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Suffice to say, Jake Paul is by far the better of the Paul brothers and has definitely calmed down in recent years with the onset of his successful boxing career. And despite how easy it has been for him to transfer his fan base over to the ring, it must also be said that Paul has worked incredibly hard to get his body to where it needs to be to compete. Just another factor that adds to his likability and respect. And there you have it, how someone like Jake Paul has remained likable even after so many controversies and hate. Do you feel like his fan base is giving him too much credit though? And should we really forgive him for those controversial moments? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below.